What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake NBA DFS Early Look. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And I, of course, am from the WiseTake Nation, which you can find on all the social media platforms listed below or directly at WiseTake.com. If you're looking to take your DFS game to the next level, we are a premium DFS content provider as well as a DFS community designed to help make you a better DFS player. Go check us out. Day pass is available, $2.50, all they cost. And it includes access to our pre-lock live stream, which we do Monday through Friday, 45 minutes prior to lock, up to lock, in addition to our projections, well, my projections, personally, cheat sheets, core plays, etc., etc. So go check it out at wisetake.com. Regardless, if you're new to the channel, you came to the right place for free DFS content as well. You could please subscribe, hit the notifications bell. Don't miss out on any of the free content we put out. We got MLB right around the corner. We plan on pumping out some content for that as well. So don't miss it. Leave some comments. I'd like to interact. I'd like to hear some feedback. Then I want to hear your thoughts on the slate. I want to hear your thoughts on the show. Anything, good or bad. Hit the like button. And most importantly, if you could share the show. The sharing, we really need to step up, man. Got to get more views here. Got to get more people in on the nation to grow the nation. The more we can grow the nation, the more we can put back into the nation to keep our products top of the line, if you will. That being said, we had a 2-game slate, right? So we technically came back, but this is really where it is, right? 11 games. Most of the teams, or a lot of the teams, are in action tonight, and we still have some injury news that we're working with. So really getting into the nitty gritty of the second half of the NBA season. And like I said, pretty soon MLB's coming around the corner. It's going to be a full-time grind. I'm excited. I'm sure the nation is excited. So let's do that dirty. We're going to start off with Detroit and Charlotte, which is our only 7 o'clock game. LaMelo Ball's price is up there. However, we do have, I believe, Devontae Graham is expected to play. He hasn't played in a long time. I'm not exactly sure in what role, what capacity he'll play. I know they said that LaMelo Ball is still going to start, so I would imagine Graham's going to come off the bench. I don't see them moving Rozier to the bench for him. So he's really cheap, $4,900 on FanDuel, $5,600 on DraftKings. I know that LaMelo Ball has really hurt his upside, but he's cheap, something to keep in mind. As far as LaMelo Ball and Rozier, I think Rozier on FanDuel specifically at 6'9" is definitely still fine. At 8'9", Ball is okay, 9K, but with Graham coming back, that could affect his minutes, could affect his usage, and it's just a really big slate. Jeremy Grant is obviously fine. Gordon Hayward's okay, but again, Charlotte is a little bit more healthy now, getting Graham back. We're not totally sure what to anticipate, what to expect, but it's a big slate, so we got to be open-minded. I would imagine that Malik Monk is the one who's going to get hurt the most in all this. Sadiq Bey is okay on the Detroit side. I don't mind him. I think that we have DeLon Wright as currently a game-time decision, something to keep in mind. He has missed a lot of time. If he does come back, that's going to affect DSJ and, of course, Saban Lee. So a couple of things to keep an eye on before we get here. I don't think that there's anything in this game that I see at this moment that I feel like I must have on an 11-game slate. But, something to consider as time goes on. Next up, Boston and Brooklyn. We got a couple 7:30 games. So a revenge spot for Kyrie Irving. Also a revenge spot for the entire Boston team. They didn't get along too well with Kyrie, from what I understand. Marcus Smart is back for Boston. So that's going to increase their defense. Their defense has really been hurting, but it's going to help. I would assume Marcus Smart spends most of his time covering Harden. So it kind of pushes me more towards Kyrie Irving. As always, Kyrie is at a more competitive position on FanDuel at point guard. But on DraftKings, he's point guard and shooting guard eligible, a little bit more flexible. Harden is the one who is only point guard. I think Harden is obviously fine. He's showing massive upside. Kevin Durant is still out. But I think Kyrie's the one that I would lean towards at the moment. As far as Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba, I don't think Smart is going to affect their usage terribly, but he could actually affect some minutes because they could trust him out there a little bit to give guys a couple extra minutes off here and there, shaving some stuff. But Jaylen Brown and Tatum, once again, are your mainstays. I don't mind Kemba Walker. I think his ownership will be really low because of how big the slate is. And Kyrie does not play defense, so I'm fine with that. Not too big on too much else. I think that Robert Williams is someone to keep an eye on, probably more so on on DraftKings, where he's not going to affect how many centers you could take. But just keep an eye on him. With Marcus Smart back, it might hurt him, because they certainly have enough guard play where they could bump everybody down, go a little bit smaller. Brooklyn does have DeAndre Jordan, but Blake Griffin is not playing, so just a couple things to consider. But I do think that Kyrie is kind of a standout here. And remember, this is a big pace boost for Boston, so I don't mean to I'm not trying to downplay what they are. I do think Kemba, Jaylen Brown, and Tatum are interesting, even with Smart back. And Marcus Smart himself is interesting. He typically has the lowest usage of the bunch, but certainly a game to keep an eye on. Atlanta and Toronto. So Toronto is missing some players still. No Siakam, no Van Fleet. That's kind of a big deal, right? They're getting a massive pace boost here against Atlanta, who plays fast and does not play very good defensively. OG and Nunneby also out. And even Atlanta, no Cam Reddish, right? I didn't realize it looks like Terrence Davis actually a game-time decision. We'll have to see his status as well. They can make Toronto even thinner. But with Cam Reddish out, we know that's meant big minutes for Kevin Huerter. I mean, he's gotten minutes regardless, but really, really big minutes, like I think 40 minutes against Miami that came with Cam Reddish out. I believe Danilo Gallinari coming off of another smash fest. So this is the second time now he's gone for 50. He definitely benefited from injuries as well. He got 39 minutes in that game against Orlando. So he's obviously in play. Only 4.7 on FanDuel. He's 5.5 on DraftKings, which I think is fair, but still pretty cheap on FanDuel. Perhaps we see John Collins take advantage of Siakam's absence. I think he's kind of in play. But on the Toronto side is really, I think, where we're honing in on. Kyle Lowry, we're going to have to make a decision on. Wow, Trae Young is only 8.8 on FanDuel. That's really cheap for Trae Young. Really cheap for Trae Young. So Lowry's 8.5. It seems kind of crazy, right? Why would I pay $300 more? I can get Trae Young. So why would I want Lowry? But this is a pace boost for him. Now, on DraftKings, different conversation. 8.6 versus 9.9. Big savings. But I think that we have to consider the pace boost, and we have to consider the usage increase. No Van Fleet, no Siakam, no OG. Lowry's going to be asked to do a little bit more in a competitive game. Norman Powell's price seems a little outrageous at 7.5, but he's in that same category. He's taking a ton of shots, and they're relying on him heavily for scoring. So I think Norman Powell, even at elevated prices, is certainly in play. I do like Chris Boucher. They've been a little bit better. Atlanta's been a little bit better against bigs. You can see Boucher got 34 minutes against Boston and went for 30 actual points. Now, he didn't get a whole ton of the peripherals, but at 6.5, I'm definitely interested, especially being that on FanDuel, you can play my power forward. He's 6.5 on DraftKings as well, but he's a center, so a little tougher to call. Speaking of Capella, Capella's shown tremendous upside this year. He's only 7.9 on DraftKings. I like him a little bit better over there, but even at 8.5, man, he's gone for 50s quite a few times this year. So this game in general is probably the most appealing that we've covered, like straight up. I think the Brooklyn-Boston game, I don't want to downplay that one. But Atlanta, not only do we have pace, we also have a lot of injuries, which makes it more compelling, if you will. Orlando and Miami, kind of the flip the script type game, or at least a change of pace, I should have said, right? That makes more sense. Both these teams play a little bit slower. Vooch has been awesome. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the league. His price on DraftKings is kind of outrageous, and this isn't necessarily. Well, actually, I guess you could argue that this spot is pretty good with Bam Adebayo out and Fournier is out, so we can expect higher usage for Vooch. Jimmy Butler's been awesome, man. He's been quietly just smashing every day, right? Every day. Missed a couple games, came back, still went for 50-something. So the price is up there, but he just seems consistent. He just seems really consistent. And with no Bam, that's going to elevate his usage as well. With no Fournier, I think we can go back to considering Terrence Ross. Got 41 minutes against Atlanta. Went out there, did his thing. He's 6.7 on DraftKings, but only 5.7 on FanDuel. Tyler Hero, kind of waiting to get his act together. Coming off of a horrific game. Played 27 minutes and accumulated 5.9 fantasy points. But the price has come down on both sides. He's under 6K. With no Bam, that's going to open up some usage and minutes for him. He has to actually kind of put things together. He's been struggling since returning from injury. Kendrick Nunn has flashed some upside, but he's a little scoring dependent for my liking, right? Especially on a massive slate. We'll check the status of Aaron Gordon. If Aaron Gordon is back, then I think he's really cheap. But we have to wait and see if we get any kind of minute limit. He hasn't played in over a month, so I would imagine that he'll be on some kind of restriction, which would be good for Vooch from a fantasy perspective. Looks like still no Cole Anthony. Michael Carter-Williams, 4,900, coming off of a really good game against Atlanta. It's back-to-back pretty good games where he's gotten close to the triple-double territory. 4,900, I'm cool with it. Is Miami the team I love to attack? No. Are they a team I love to attack with guards? Necessarily, not necessarily, but he is cheap, so maybe we need the value at some point. Kelly Olynyk should be pretty popular on DraftKings. He's 5'1", so they did at least raise his price, but he's power forward eligible, and even if you play him at center, you got some flexibility. He's 4-5 on FanDuel, so I think that we'll get him at relatively low ownership because of how big the slate is. People are going to want to spend money at the position, but he did go for 40 against New Orleans, played 36 minutes with no Bam, so that was pretty big. Goran Dragic I kind of skipped over, but with no Bam, that could open up some upside for him as well. He's played 30 minutes in 2 straight games. Has not shown the upside we're looking for, but he can certainly do it here. But Kelly Olynyk is kind of one of the standout value plays that I see on FanDuel. The problem is that he's at center and you only get one. And that is a problem. But this game is definitely interesting. Precious. Where are you at, Precious? Precious Achua did get some time, but only got 16 minutes. I mean, listen, against Atlanta, he went for 28 in just 12 minutes. So he's got the upside. But we're talking about Atlanta is a much more like fast-paced team. Right, it's a little bit of an opposite type scenario. But if Olynyk were to get into foul trouble, I think Precious is the head, right? If Olynyk gets into foul trouble or something goes wrong while he's covering Vooch, Precious is the one that's going to benefit from that. So I may set some sort of rule. It's funny that he's small forward on FanDuel and center on DraftKings, but I'll probably set some sort of rule and the optimizer saying, like, don't play them together, right? But just something to keep an eye on in case you do go heavy on a guy like Kelly Olynyk. All right, let's move it over to Minnesota and New Orleans. I'm sorry, no, my bad. New York, Milwaukee. All right, so Giannis every day. Why not get some? I'm actually kind of interested in Randall also. This is a pace boost for the Knicks. Now, Milwaukee is a very good team and a big test for these Knicks, but I'm interested because of the usage. No Derrick Rose, we know that. Middleton's okay, but Holiday's the one. He's 6'6" that we need more information about what's going on with Holiday. Is he going to play more? He's been back for a little bit since the COVID thing, but they've gradually increased his minutes. Now, he's had some time, but did he use that time to get into game shape, or did he use that time to take it off with family? I don't know. He's only 6'6" on FanDuel. I guess the true test is if he starts. If he starts, I would think that means that they're going to play him a normal allotment of minutes. If not, which we may not know at the first lock at 7, right? Because the game starts at 8. But something to keep an eye on. If he doesn't start, then I'm going to assume that he's coming off the bench again, and I think that's good for Giannis and Middleton from a fantasy output. We mentioned no Derrick Rose. Nerlens Noel did play really well. Taj Gibson, I think, is questionable, but Noel is getting monster minutes. If Taj Gibson comes back, that's going to affect his minutes. If Taj Gibson continues to miss, and I'm looking for his... There he is, a game-time decision. If Taj continues to miss, he's really the only center on the team. So we'll have to see what happens with that. RJ Barrett's fine, right? We have some injuries, so we could see his minutes stay a little higher without Rose. But Elfrid Payton, man, he came out and balled out now. Went 35 minutes against Detroit. And if in hindsight, when he got ruled in, I was a little concerned about, well, he's missed time. Like, what's the deal? Are they going to play him? But hindsight's always 20/20, right? He missed 4 straight games. Tibbs is a guy that is not afraid to play his guys' minutes. So he got rid of DSJ, right? I don't think he likes to play Frank Nitti a ton. So, and he clearly likes Quickly off the ball. He likes Quickly as like the 2. So should have been a little bit more on him, I guess, right? Against Detroit. I'm willing to do it with Rose out. Now, Rose is the biggest threat to him. With Rose out, I do think that Elf is a candidate to play big minutes if he stays out of foul trouble, etc. And the reason I say that is because if Holiday starts, he's going to have his hands full, both covering Holiday and also Holiday covering him. Holiday is one of the best guard defenders out there. This game does kind of set up well for a guy like Quickly. This is a team that encourages three-point shooting, and Quickly is probably the best three-point shooter on this team. Now, he's very volatile. You can see only got 12 minutes against Detroit after playing 29 against San Antonio. Well, San Antonio was a blowout, so that's probably a bad example. But I do like Quickly. I wish he would play more as a Knicks fan. I'd like to see him play a little bit more. But either way, for tournaments specifically, especially at 4,800 on FanDuel, I think Quickly's in play. That's all I'm saying. Burks is okay. The rest is okay, right? But interesting nonetheless. Now we get on to Minnesota and New Orleans. Scroll to the top. Really good spot for Karl-Anthony Towns, man. With or without Steven Adams, New Orleans has been getting slaughtered by bigs, evident by Kelly Olynyk. So I think it's a really interesting spot for Towns. I know he hasn't shown a whole ton of upsides yet. Well, I guess he's shown a couple games, right, since he's been back. He's had a couple pops. But lately, he's had some really soft opponents, and he's gotten into foul trouble. Things just haven't worked out well. But I do like him in this spot. Zion's price has gone way up. Coming off of a really good game against Chicago, one of the nut matchups. This is also a really good matchup. So I think Zion's fine. I don't feel comfortable paying 9K necessarily, but I do respect that Minnesota's defense is horrendous and that their games have been fairly fast-paced with a lot of scoring. Brandon Ingram's price a little bit more within range on FanDuel at 7.7 at 8.4 on DraftKings. I'm wondering if we're going to catch New Orleans a little lower owned over there because of their prices. The prices are clearly a lot higher. Well, for Ingram anyway. But in general, looking at Zion and Ingram, and they're both pretty expensive. But again, this is one of the better opponents. New Orleans has definitely picked up their pace as of late. Lonzo's okay. Anthony Edwards, a little bit more interesting. He's been fairly consistent getting big minutes without Beasley. Beasley continues to be out on suspension, so I think that a guy like Edwards can certainly pick up the slack. And I'm pretty sure that we've been seeing two guards, or scoring guards anyway, scoring wings, if you will, have been doing the dirty to New Orleans. So I'm good with that. I know New Orleans is a team that tries to emphasize defense, but they haven't really done a good job of that in the stretch of the season. Maybe they took this time to kind of prepare for that a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. Bledsoe's okay. Josh Hart's always kind of okay. Steven Adams is kind of interesting. He hasn't done a whole ton, but he's cheap and he's won some people some slates. I feel like I would just rather take Kelly Olynyk at that point for $500 cheaper on FanDuel and the same price on DraftKings. I think Ricky Rubio at 4.7 is probably a little bit too cheap with some of the injuries. He's 6K on DraftKings, only 4.7 on FanDuel, just to put it into perspective. So I do like him a little bit better over there on FanDuel. The other guys, you got Jalen Noel, who's okay, right? Getting about 20-something minutes a game. Popped against Washington, but kind of showed his floor since then. Jared Vanderbilt's a dude. Like, he's been starting, not really getting big minutes, but he's also popped in limited samples. So these are all guys to consider. Looks like Jordan McLaughlin out for Minnesota. That's got to be really good for Rubio and Noel. Because I didn't realize this. McLaughlin played against Charlotte and Phoenix. And so now, hold up. If we isolate point guards, you got Jalen Noel and Ricky Rubio. And Noel was already playing decent minutes. Right? So that's a big boost, I think, for Rubio and Noel. Whether we play them together separately, I have to sift through that later on when we write the articles and go through our projections. But either way, these guys are cheap against a team that has not played good defense against the position since trading Jrue Holiday. So right there, Rubio and Noel are going to be two of the guys that we have to really look into for value at the position. We'll move on to... Shit. I already did that. Philly and Chicago. Man. So Embiid and Simmons was supposed to be going to the All-Star game. They both got ruled out through the protocols. Right? So there should be a lot of value here to pick from. Now, first off, shooting guards have been going off against Philly, one of the better DVP spots, defense first position, for those who don't know. So Levine should be a low-owned stud. And I say low-owned because there's just so many studs. I think he will be low-owned. To keep an eye on, especially missing Simmons. That's a big-time perimeter defender they're going to be without. You would think that Tobias is just going to get all the shots he wants. He's 8-1 on DraftKings. They priced him accordingly. FanDuel left him at 6.9, which is just craziness. So expect him to be really popular on FanDuel, and for good reason, with no Embiid and no Benny Simmons. Lauri Markkanen, currently he's probable. So he's missed a lot of time. Look at this. He hasn't played since February 5th. I would imagine he's on a minutes limit, but his presence coming back is going to affect usage minutes for a lot of players, maybe guys like Patrick Williams, maybe Thaddeus Young, and these kind of players, so something to keep an eye on. Kobe White's okay. Wendell Carter's okay. Shake Milton is probably something we're going to want a piece of. He's only 4,200 on FanDuel. He's 5-3 on DraftKings. Again, DraftKings is a little bit more savvy with this, right? They got to plan accordingly. FanDuel's just slacking. So expect Shake Milton to be ridiculously popular. He played 28, 29, 31 minutes in his last 3 games. And that's with a lot of these guys playing. Now you're taking them out of the equation. And you match him up with a guy like Kobe White. Expect him to be extremely popular. Seth Curry at 4,200 on FanDuel. And it's 5-2 on DraftKings. So Philly is going to be pretty chalky on FanDuel. DraftKings, maybe not so much. Or not as much on a big slate. But we can expect Curry to take a lot of shots as well. Still probably a little more scoring dependent than I'm too comfortable with. But he is very cheap. But Shake Milton, I mean, we just got done talking about a couple of them, right? But clearly, the Sixers on FanDuel are just ridiculously underpriced. Right? And then we get to the centers, and that's where things get even more interesting. So we got Dwight Howard. Not exactly sure what they're going to do in a smash spot against Chicago. Dwight Howard's usage has been low, no doubt. We've also got Tony Bradley, who we've seen at times get minutes, not really in the rotation a ton. He's got massive point per minute upside. But we got to make a decision here as well. Now, Dwight Howard's only 3,800. So you think about Kelly Olynyk, who is more active, a lot more active. Do you pay a few $100 more for Olynyk, who's got more ceiling, or who's more active, or do you take Dwight Howard, assuming he starts, against a team that's terrible against bigs, and save the money and just hope? Now on FanDuel, you do get the blocks and steals thing, and that is something Dwight Howard over his career used to be decent at. He doesn't do it a whole ton, but he doesn't play a whole ton. But if you look what Dwight Howard is capable of, he went for 34 in 16 minutes against Dallas, 14 points, 8 rebounds. So this is the kind of stuff he can do on a regular basis. 12 minutes against Utah, 12 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block, 1 steal, 1 for 25. So center, I can tell you right now, is going to be a crazy one. But I feel like between Olynyk and him, and we talked about Cat, who I really like, that there's going to be a lot on the table. Philly's underpriced on FanDuel, bottom line. How much is Dwight Howard over here? I forgot to check. 5-3. They even priced his ass up. Now Tony Bradley's only 3-3, but that hasn't worked so well for me in the past when I've tried with Tony Bradley. Dallas OKC, it's a back-to-back for Dallas. Luka Doncic obviously is fine. His ownership should be low. They moved him back to point guard. Interestingly enough, FanDuel moved Luka to small forward, and I guess they did it just for the sake of the slate to be able to get some people can still play Luka, because they moved him back to point guard now, which is where he should be, right? He's fine. SGA is cheap on FanDuel at 7-9. I'm good with him. Porzingis, curious to see if he plays on a back-to-back. I feel like he's played a back-to-back recently. Yeah, no, maybe not actually. And in fact, he's just coming back from an injury himself, so I doubt he does. So that'll be a boost to Mr. Luka. The problem is OKC's pace is horrendous, man. Like, I hate taking players against OKC because their pace is so fucking shitty. That being said, if Porzingis does miss, Jalen Brunson should see a usage boost. Maybe he slides into the starting lineup. It's possible. On the OKC side, this is a really good spot for Horford with or without Porzingis. Dallas has been getting smashed by bigs. Darius Bazley's in play, though I'd prefer Horford to be out when I roster him for massive upside. Roby seems to only do well when he comes off the bench and nobody plays him. That seems to be his MO. J. Rich also should get a boost with no Porzingis. He's 4,700 on FanDuel, 5-2 on DraftKings. I'm into that. Dort did come through against San Antonio, got big minutes kind of out of nowhere. We know Hamidou Diallo is out, but the floor is just ridiculously low. I don't see anything in this game that stands out to me a ton. Kleber's okay. Finney Smith's okay. Hardaway's only 4-1. That's actually really cheap on FanDuel. 4-9 on DraftKings, give you some perspective. But he's been playing less coming off the bench. His role's been reduced. If Porzingis is out, though, we can see that role extend. But I don't see a whole ton. Maladon's really cheap. But Ty Jerome's kind of been eating into his minutes a bit. It's really SGA and Luka. Just don't love a whole ton. I really don't like the OKC pace. Golden State and the Clippers. One of the late night hammers. We got 3 games late. We got just a massive amount of games. Steph Curry's okay. He should draw some Pat Bev defense, but he shoots threes, so it is what it is. He's fine. Kawhi Leonard's fine, but Paul George on FanDuel is just too cheap. Kawhi is only $400 more expensive than Paul George on DraftKings. So you feel like you're getting a deal. But PG 7-8 on FanDuel after busting on everybody against Washington because he was feeling dizzy, right? I wonder how many people are afraid to play Paul George. I'm not. I will play him and just pray that he does not get dizzy and shoot around. But I do like Paul George quite a bit at 7-8 on FanDuel against Golden State. The other issue, of course, is can Golden State hang around? If they do, you would think that Draymond Green is going to be one of the guys that has a big game along with Steph Curry. Kelly Oubre should have his hands full matchup-wise with Kawhi and these guys. He missed a couple games, but he will play. He's had a really good season. So the issue, of course, is do the games stay close for long enough? Andrew Wiggins is really cheap at 5-8, but he was the only option in their last game, and he just kind of sucked. So that, wasn't a whole ton of fun. Don't love the ancillary players. I mean, Pat Bev is okay, but we got Shake Milton. You really playing Pat Bev over Shake Milton? I don't know. It seems like a tough one. If Wiseman were to play, I would actually like Wiseman. I know there was a bunch of injuries. That's why he got the 34 minutes, but it's unclear, it looks like, for health protocols. He missed a COVID test over the weekend. Now his status is uncertain. We'll have to see what happens. If Wiseman plays, he's another center you could add to the list. Now, in DraftKings, these are the kind of plays that could really help you out. But DraftKings was smart, and they priced everybody up accordingly. If Wiseman's out, then Kevon Looney should play more. Maybe Paschal plays a little bit more. So we'll need more clarification. But PG at 7-8 is too cheap. The only question is Golden State hang around? The Clippers are a very good team. Golden State is just not great right now. Right? When they get Clay back, that'll help, though. But anyway, Houston, Sacramento. Christian Wood is still out. Wall versus Fox is interesting. De'Aaron Fox just continues to have a phenomenal year. Went for 61 against Dame in a little duel with him. John Wall, I think, finally had himself a decent game, but it still really wasn't good enough against Brooklyn. Right? The Kings are a good opponent. I'll give them that. It's just not great. Tyrese Halliburton is supposed to be back. Keep that in mind. De'Aaron Fox 9-1 on DraftKings. He's missed some time, but he was on a roll, man, just showing tremendous upside. 7-6 seems a little bit too expensive for me, but 6-7 on DraftKings, a little bit better. Harrison Barnes has also had like a revamped year, playing much, much better. It's a good spot for centers, right? So Rayshawn Holmes, I think we should have in the back of our minds. Marvin Bagley, especially with Hassan Whiteside still out. We'll check the status of Eric Gordon, who's been fucking terrible. He's only 5-1 on FanDuel, even though he's god awful. If he comes back at 5-1 on FanDuel, he's worth consideration. He's 6-1 on DraftKings. His usage has been fine. It's just he's been awful. It's not his issue. Usage is not his issue. It's him. He's been terrible. It does, interestingly enough, looks like Kevin Porter Jr. was recalled from the G League. So it looks like Kevin Porter Jr. will see minutes as Houston's backup point guard after playing well with the Rio Grande Vipers. Something to keep in mind. So I would think that hurts John Wall's upside a little bit. It's going to hurt Gordon's upside as well, because I think his role will reduce. Meanwhile, Kevin Porter Jr., I wonder how many minutes he's going to get. Something to keep an eye on for sure. How much is Kevin Porter Jr. over here? Check right now. 3,200 on DraftKings. Kind of interesting. Jayshawn Tate's fine. The new house is still out, and the Waba is out. So Houston is a little thin. Let's isolate Houston for a second. On DraftKings, I can do that. How many bodies they got? I got Wall, Oladipo, Tate, Patton. Wall, Oladipo, Tate, Patton, Sterling Brown, PJ Tucker, McLemore. So, I mean, there's a good chance that Porter Jr. gets a decent amount of minutes, honestly. 3,200 is too cheap. I mean, I don't know for sure, but they're missing other guys. No Nwaba, no House. Like, you look at their point guards, like Depot can get some time, especially if Eric Gordon misses, right? You're looking at, like, Sterling Brown. Like, nah, they want to see Kevin Porter Jr. play. So I think that's kind of interesting. Houston's games are kind of weird, right? It's like blowout or nothing. But there's some interesting plays here for sure. And it's going to be a late game. I think we see lower ownership. Phoenix and Portland. Last game here. Damian Lillard is going to be matched up with Chris Paul. I don't love the pace of Phoenix either. But Dame is obviously Dame. McCollum is still out. Devin Booker is currently questionable. If Devin Booker were to miss, there's some kind of knee issue. If he were to miss, Chris Paul would be underpriced. And I still think Chris Paul is definitely in play with the way he's been. But 7.5 would become like just too cheap. DeAndre Ayton is fine. Enes Kanter on the other side is also fine. Covington is 6'2" on FanDuel. We know what his upside is, especially with the blocks and steals. He's been way more consistent. Phoenix does slow it down a little bit, but they got some young guys. They can get sloppy from time to time. Melo has been playing really well, right? Could we acknowledge that? He's just kind of kicked it on a little bit. He's been playing extremely well. Maybe he continues his streak after the All-Star break, playing against one of his buddies in Chris Paul. Dario Saric has played well in limited minutes. You know, Jay Crowder's only 4K. That seems kind of cheap. 4K seems a little bit too cheap. I know his floor is low, but in close games, he's played some pretty decent sized roles. So I think that 4K is just too cheap. He's 4.7 on DraftKings. Even that's fine. But 4K is a little bit too cheap for Crowder. It's a really good slate so far. We'll see if there's any news that comes and shakes things up. But so far, I for one think it's actually a really good slate. So I'm excited about it. I know the show was a little bit longer because we had a lot of games to get through. But hopefully you find some valuable information from it. I'm excited to write the article. I'm excited to get this slate moving, pop on the Y stream. This is what I consider to be the real first slate back. So I'm glad to be back. Glad to be hanging out with the nation as always. Hopefully I'll catch y'all at the pre-lock live stream or Y stream, which is going to start at 6:15 p.m. Eastern at WiseTake.com. Please hit the like button on your way out. Leave some comments. Interact with me. I want to hear from you. And like I said, man, the best thing you can do for us is share. Share the show as much as you can. We appreciate you. For myself, the entire WiseTake Nation, as always, good luck.
Yeah.